The last time I believed I was part of a family, I was on my knees in the snow, lacing up my stepsister's skis while her diamond engagement ring dug into my palm. "Tighter," Lila had snapped, her perfect pink lips curling like she'd caught me stealing instead of doing her another damn favour. The ring was new, a gaudy thing from some trust fund idiot who'd proposed after knowing her 3 weeks. I should have known then what was coming. The lodge behind us was all warm wood and crackling fireplaces, the kind of place where rich people clinked glasses and pretended to like each other. My stepmother Margot stood by the window, her reflection a smudge of burgundy silk and cold calculation as she watched me. "Hurry up, Juniper," she called, sweet as poison honey. "We wouldn't want you holding everyone back." As if I wasn't the one who'd packed their bags, ordered their meals, and smiled when they called me the help, in whispers that weren't meant to be quiet. My father, no, Daniel, didn't even look at me. He was too busy adjusting his watch, the platinum one Lila had bought him with my birthday money. "Storm's rolling in," he muttered, like he was commenting on the stock market and not the fact that the sky had turned the colour of a bruise. The wind howled through the pines, and I swear it sounded like laughter. Then the avalanche siren started screaming. Chaos. Skiers stampeding for the gondolas, staff shouting about emergency protocols. Margot grabbed Lila's arm, her voice sharp as shattered glass. "The helicopter's waiting! Now!" They sprinted for the private hangar, Daniel on their heels. I stumbled after them, my boots sliding on ice because of course I thought they'd wait. They didn't. The snowmobiles were already running, engines snarling. 4 seats? 4 of them. Margot didn't hesitate. "Juniper's strong," she said, tossing me Lila's discarded scarf like a bone to a dog. "She'll find her way." Lila giggled, tucking herself against her fiancé like this was all some thrilling adventure. "And Daniel?" He finally looked at me, just long enough to say, "Don't be dramatic." Then they were gone, taillights swallowed by the blizzard. The cold hit me like a betrayal. Not the sharp, clean freeze of winter, but the slow, suffocating kind. The kind that creeps into your veins and whispers, "You let this happen." I wrapped Lila's scarf around my neck, the silk still sticky with her perfume. That's when I felt it. The locket. The stupid thrift store thing I'd worn since childhood, the one Margot always said made me look cheap. I gripped it like a lifeline. Then the snow swallowed me whole. The last thing I heard before the wind stole my breath was Margot's voice in my head laughing. "She'll find her way." Yeah, I found it all right. Straight into the dark. The world became a white, howling beast. One moment I was standing there, fingers numb around that damned locket. The next, I couldn't see my own hands. The wind didn't just blow, it clawed, ripping Lila's scarf right off my neck like it was taking its cut. I stumbled forward, boots sinking into snow that wasn't powder anymore. It was quicksand, greedy and cold. I should have run for the lodge. That's what people do in survival videos. Find shelter, start a fire, wait it out. But the lodge was gone, erased behind a wall of swirling white. And the truth, I didn't want to go back. Not to their half-empty hot chocolate mugs. Not to the staff's pitying glances. So I did the stupid thing. I walked into the storm. Big mistake. The first fall knocked the air out of me. My knee hit something sharp, a buried rock maybe, and suddenly I was tasting copper. The second fall was worse. My gloves were useless now, soaked through, and when I tried to push myself up, my palms burned like I'd pressed them to a stove. Somewhere behind me, a tree branch snapped with a sound like a gunshot. That's when the fear really kicked in, not the panicky scream into the void kind, the quiet kind, the "oh, this is how I die" kind. I crawled. Don't ask me why. Instinct, maybe, or just pure spite. Every inch felt like a mile, the snow filling my sleeves, my collar, my lungs. I thought about Lila tucked into that snowmobile, her fiancé's arm around her. thought about Margot's smirk, even Daniel's shrug. They were probably warming their hands over some resort fireplace now, making jokes about Juniper's wilderness adventure. The cold got funnier after a while. I started laughing when my fingers stopped hurting. That's bad, right? When the pain stops. I remember reading that somewhere. Or maybe Margot said it back when she used to bother with fake motherly advice. Frostbite's sneaky, Juniper. First it hurts, then it doesn't. That's when you're in trouble. Jokes on her, I was always in trouble. Then, light, not heavenly, not some pearly gates bullshit. Harsh, yellow, swinging. A flashlight beam cut through the snow, and for a second I thought I'd hallucinated it. But then it landed on me, and a voice growled, "Christ alive!" A shadow loomed, not death, something bigger. A man in a fur-lined parka hauled me up like I weighed nothing. His beard was crusted with ice, his eyes the exact colour of the storm, grey and furious. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't call for help, just slung me over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes and started walking. Last thing I saw before I passed out? The walls of a cabin, darker than the night, and the glint of something metal in his hand. A knife. Turns out, freezing to death was the second worst thing that could have happened to me that night. Consciousness returned in jagged pieces. First came the smell, wood smoke and something bitter like whiskey left to burn in a glass. Then the heat, so intense it prickled my skin, a brutal contrast to the frozen wasteland still clinging to my bones. My eyelids weighed 1,000 pounds, but I forced them open. Stone walls. A fire roaring in a hearth big enough to roast a bear. And him, the man from the storm, silhouetted against the flames, his shadow stretching monstrous across the ceiling. He wasn't just big, he was carved, the kind of muscle that came from breaking rocks, not gym mirrors. I tried to sit up, a mistake. My body screamed, and the wool blanket draped over me slipped, revealing bandages wrapped around my hands. Frostbite. The man turned. His face was all hard lines and darker intent, a map of old violence written in scars. "Don't," he said, voice like gravel under a boot. "You'll tear the stitches." Stitches? I looked down. My left sleeve was rolled up, revealing a nasty gash along my forearm, neatly sewn with black thread. My stomach lurched. "Did you?" "Had to." He tossed a bloodied rag into the fire. "Rock sliced you open like a letter." The way he said it, so matter-of-fact, made my skin crawl. Who the hell was this guy? Some backwoods hermit with a sewing kit and a hero complex? Then I saw the knife. It lay on the table between us, still wet. Not a hunting blade. Something older, crueler, the kind of steel that had seen things. My pulse spiked. He followed my gaze. Smiled, not the warm kind. "Relax, kid. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have wasted my thread." Kid. Like I was some lost hiker instead of a girl left to die. Anger cut through the fog in my head. "I'm not." A coughing fit stole my voice, my throat raw from cold and screaming. The man sighed, dragged a chair across the floor, and sat. Too close. Name's Elias. No last name. Like he expected me to know it. I didn't. Silence stretched, broken only by the fire's crackle. Elias studied me, eyes flicking from my matted hair to my trembling fingers. Then, his gaze snagged. On the locket. It must have slipped free when he carried me in, the silver chain glinting against my collarbone. His breath hitched. A tiny sound, but in that quiet, it might as well have been a gunshot. "Where," he said very slowly, "did you get that?" I touched it instinctively. The metal was warm from my skin, the swan's wings raised in mid-beat. "It's mine." Elias moved faster than I could blink. 1 second he was seated, the next his hand was around the locket, his face inches from mine. His pupils were blown wide, black, swallowing grey. "This," he hissed, "was made for my daughter." The world tilted. His fingers found the hidden catch, the one I'd never been able to pry open as a kid. With a click, the locket split. Inside, etched in tiny letters, "For my little swan." Elias made a sound like a dying animal. His knees hit the floor. And just like that, I wasn't Juniper the cast-off anymore. The truth, when it came, wasn't a whisper. It was a scream. The cabin walls seemed to shrink as Elias clutched the locket like a holy relic. His knuckles turned bone white, the firelight catching the tremor in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't the growl from before, it was shattered glass. 18 years ago, he began, men broke into my home and took my daughter from her crib. His thumb traced the engraving in the locket, a ritual of grief worn smooth by time. Ava was 6 months old. They left no ransom note, no demands, just this. He flicked the locket's hidden compartment, revealing a second inscription I'd never seen. Blackwell Manor, December the 25th, 2004. A date, an address, a life stolen on Christmas morning. Ice slid down my spine. Blackwell. The name rang like a bell in some deep, forgotten part of my memory. Elias' gaze pinned me. I tore the world apart looking for her. Paid mercenaries, bribed cops, followed leads from Moscow to Mumbai. His laugh was razor wire. Turns out she was right here, in this god-forsaken country, wearing this. The locket chain snapped taut in his grip. My pulse roared in my ears. You think I'm... DNA doesn't lie. He yanked open a drawer, flung a folder onto the bed. Inside, photos of a baby with a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. On the left shoulder. My shoulder. The room tilted. I reached for the scar beneath my sweater, the one Margot had called a childhood burn. Lies stacked on lies. My whole life a counterfeit. Elias leaned in, his breath hot with whiskey and vengeance. Your family, the word dripped venom, paid a nurse to switch you with a dying orphan, made sure I'd never find you. His smile was terrifying. But they didn't count on the storm. Outside, the blizzard howled like it knew, like it had been waiting. I stared at the fire, seeing Margot's smirk, Lila's diamond ring, Daniel's shrug. They hadn't just abandoned me. They'd stolen me. Elias pressed a knife into my palm, the same one he'd stitched me with. You want to cut throats, he murmured, or cut strings. The blade glinted, hungry. Turns out, revenge isn't a sprint, it's a blood sport. And Elias? He was a hell of a coach. The fire crackled, but its heat couldn't touch the glacial fury settling in my bones. I stared at the knife in my hand, its edge catching the light like a dare. Elias had given me steel, but the real weapon pulsed through my veins, the poison of betrayal finally crystallizing into something lethal. Margot's face flashed behind my eyelids, not her sneering mask from the storm, but softer, younger, tucking me in with stories about the lucky orphan she'd saved. Every bedtime lie had been a brick in my cage. I hurled the knife across the cabin. It thudded into the doorframe, vibrating with the force of my throw. Elias didn't flinch. That's one way to skin a cat, he drawled, but the Blackwoods, they're dragons. I turned on him, my voice dangerously quiet. You think I don't know that? I lived in their dungeon for 18 years. My fingers found the locket again, its edges biting into my palm. They didn't just steal your daughter. They made her thank them for scraps. The realization hit like a second avalanche. All those gifts that came with strings, the way Lila's hand-me-downs always smelled like her perfume for weeks after. Even my name, Juniper, like some hardy weed that could thrive on neglect, had been a joke at my expense. Elias poured 2 fingers of bourbon, pushed it toward me. Rage is fuel, he said, but fire needs direction. I knocked it back, letting the burn chase the cold from my throat. When I met his eyes, my reflection in them looked foreign, feral. Teach me, I said. Not a request, a demand. The storm outside had settled. The one inside me was just beginning. Dawn painted the mountaintops blood red as Elias tossed me a pair of combat boots. Lesson 1, he growled. Wealthy prey fights dirtiest. The next 6 months blurred into a brutal ballet of reinvention. Mornings began with my face in the dirt, learning how to disarm attackers twice my size. Afternoons were spent in Blackwell's underground library, where I memorized financial ledgers until the numbers danced behind my eyelids. Evenings? Those belonged to the mirror, where I practiced Lila's simpering smile until I could summon it like a weapon. Elias broke my fingers twice. Pain's a better teacher than me, he'd say as he set the bones, his voice betraying no sympathy. By the 3rd month, I could pick locks with my left hand and hack corporate servers with my right. The locket stayed around my neck, its weight a constant reminder. When exhaustion threatened to break me, I'd press the silver swan to my lips and taste vengeance. You're not learning to fight them, Elias corrected during one particularly vicious sparring session after I'd taken a knee to the ribs. You're learning to become them, better, smarter, crueler. He yanked me up by my hair. Again. Winter melted into spring. The girl who'd crawled through snow died 100 deaths, replaced each time by something harder, sharper. The day I finally pinned Elias to the mats, his knife at his throat, he actually smiled. Now, you're ready, he said, pride glinting like the blade at his jugular. I sheathed the knife. No, I corrected. Now, the real lesson begins. The penthouse windows of Blackwell Tower framed the alpine peaks like a predator observing its hunting grounds. I swirled bourbon in a crystal glass, watching ice cubes fracture the amber liquid, a perfect metaphor for what was about to happen to my former family. The television murmured quietly in the background, some insipid news segment about the Blackwood Corporation's anniversary gala. Footage showed Lila preening in couture, her engagement ring flashing like a distress signal. Then, the broadcast cut to breaking news. A red banner slashed across the screen. Private jet in distress over Mont Blanc. The camera zoomed in on a speck of metal tumbling through storm clouds, a G6 with the Blackwood crest on its tail. My fingers tightened around the glass. Fate, it seemed, had a delicious sense of irony. The emergency line rang. I let it trill 3 times before answering. Lila's voice was a shrill parody of itself. Juniper, you have to... Have to what? I interrupted, walking to the window. The storm mirrored the one they'd left me in. Same time of year, same mountain range. Poetic justice tasted better than the bourbon. Speak clearly, Lila. Reception's poor when you're crashing. A muffled sob. Then Margot snatched the phone, her aristocratic calm fraying at the edges. Send your rescue team, now. Your father's... Daniel Blackwood is no father of mine. I traced the locket's outline beneath my silk blouse. But since you mentioned him, how's the leg? Silence. Then a thud. Probably the satellite phone hitting the jet's interior as the truth registered. They'd seen the news reports last year about Elias Blackwell's long-lost heiress. They just never imagined the charity case they'd abandoned would hold their lives in her hands. A knock at the penthouse door. My head of security stood at attention, rescue helicopters idling on the rooftop pad. Mom, the media team is ready. I finished the bourbon in one burning swallow. Tell them to keep the cameras rolling. The Blackwoods are about to give the performance of their lives. The phone line crackled with static and panic. I could practically smell Lila's fear through the receiver, that cloying jasmine perfume of hers now mingled with sweat and aviation fuel. They're saying the tail's damaged. Her voice splintered into hysterics. We're too heavy to... A metallic shriek cut her off as the jet lurched. In the background, Margot was barking orders at someone, her polished society accent crumbling into something raw and ugly. I settled deeper into my leather chair, watching the live news feed. The camera zoomed in on the struggling aircraft, its left engine sputtering dark smoke against the twilight sky. How poetic, their precious escape vehicle becoming their coffin. "Juniper, please!" Lila's whisper was suddenly intimate, like she was pressing her lips to my ear like she used to before delivering some backhanded compliment. "I'll give you anything. My trust fund, the penthouse." I laughed. The sound made my head of security glance up from his tablet. "Darling," I purred, "I own the bank that holds your trust. The penthouse has been mine since last Tuesday." Another violent tremor rocked the plane. This time, Daniel's voice came through, wheezing with pain. "Your mother was wrong to leave you, but..." There it is. I tapped my nails against the phone. The deathbed rewrite of history. "Tell me, Daniel, does Margot know you're the one who suggested leaving me behind, or that you pocketed the insurance payout from my accidental death?" Silence. Then, a whimper from Lila. The news ticker updated. "Blackwood jet enters death spiral." I stood, smoothing my skirt. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll crash in exactly," I checked the radar. 7 minutes. My team will arrive in 8. Lila's scream nearly blew out the speaker. I smiled. "Pray, the mountain is merciful." I let the call disconnect with Lila's scream still vibrating in the air. The penthouse hummed with quiet efficiency. Analysts tracking the jet's death spiral, medics prepping trauma kits with methodical precision. My security chief handed me a tablet showing 7 camera feeds trained on different sections of the mountain. "Audio's live," he murmured. "We're recording everything." I swiped to feed 3 just as the jet's emergency chute deployed with a ragged jerk. It caught the dying light like a grotesque parade float, the Blackwood crest rippling as the aircraft carved a brutal scar through the snow. Margot emerged first, her designer coat flapping like broken wings. Even half a mountain away, I could see the moment her survival instincts warred with her vanity. She actually paused to smooth her hair before helping Daniel crawl from the wreckage. The audio feed delivered every delicious gasp. "Have to find shelter before dark. My ankle's shattered, you stupid woman." Lila's voice rose above them both, shrill as a car alarm. "She's watching. I know she is." I zoomed in on her face, streaked mascara, bloodied lip trembling. For the first time in her life, Lila Blackwood looked interesting. My finger hovered over the intercom button. Let them wonder if help was coming. Let them imagine my face in every shadow. The human mind constructs its own worst tortures. I simply provided the raw materials. The rescue team stood ready at the helipad. I checked my watch. "Give them 3 more minutes in the dark," I said. After all, what was 3 minutes compared to the lifetime they'd stolen from me? The helicopter blades carved the frozen air into violent gusts as we descended. Through the frosted window, I watched 3 dark specks stumble across the snowfield, pathetic insects crawling across a marble table. My breath fogged the glass as I wiped it clean, savouring the way Margot's limping gait made her look every bit her 53 years. Elias handed me the microphone with a predator's smile. "Remember," he said, "let them see the knife before you twist it." The landing skids kissed the snow. Cameras whirred to life as the media team fanned out, their lenses hungry for every flinch and tremor. The Blackwoods froze like startled deer when the spotlight hit them. Daniel hunched over his ruined leg, Lila's designer boots splitting at the seams, Margot's gloved hands clutching at her throat like a silent film damsel. I stepped into the light wearing the exact coat they'd left me to die in, recreated stitch for stitch by Elias's tailors, but lined with sable now. The wind caught my hair just right as I smiled. "Miss me?" Margot's face collapsed. Lila actually took a stumbling step backward. Only Daniel found his voice, though it cracked like thin ice. "You orchestrated this." I tilted my head, letting the microphone catch every word. "Did I sabotage your plane? Or was it the same storm that taught me how long it takes for frostbite to set in?" The cameras zoomed in on their bandaged fingers. 27 minutes, in case you're wondering. A sound technician handed me a tablet. Their panicked cockpit recordings already edited into a highlight reel. I tapped play. Their own voices filled the mountain air, begging a daughter they'd left for dead. The playback echoed across the mountainside, their own voices damning them. Margot's whispered confession to the pilot, "We can't wait for search teams," mixed with Lila's shrill demand to divert to Geneva first. The recording captured every ugly truth, broadcast live to the 23 News network circling this spectacle like vultures. Daniel lunged at me, his ruined leg buckling instantly. Security pinned him face first into the snow as cameras captured his unravelling. "You vindictive little—" "Careful." I crouched beside him, the microphone picking up my whisper. "They're filming your good side." A production assistant handed me a second tablet, the real masterpiece. Bank records, hospital invoices, the original adoption papers with Margot's signature beside a nurse's sworn confession, now playing on every screen across the country. Lila made a sound like a wounded animal when she saw her own birth certificate flash across the display. "That's not real," I finished for her. "Correct, because you were born to a heroin-addicted maid Margot paid off after stealing me." I turned to the cameras. The Blackwood heiress was always me. They just kept the receipt. Margot's scream tore through the alpine air as realization hit. This wasn't a rescue. It was an execution, their reputations dissolving like sugar in hot tea as the world watched. The social media ticker scrolling beside the live feed exploded. #fake heiress, #Blackwell revenge, #karma is a bitch. I straightened my coat and addressed the nearest camera. The Blackwell Group will be funding avalanche relief efforts in honour of family. Elias's proud smirk burned hotter than any revenge. As the helicopter blades began their lethal whirl again, a sudden mechanical roar split the air as 3 unmarked helicopters descended like black raptors. Margot's head snapped up, her tear-streaked face paling further when she recognised the insignia on their doors. Interpol. Elias stepped forward, the wind whipping his coat like a villain's cape. "Did you really think," he called over the rotor wash, "we'd let you off with just humiliation?" The lead agent marched toward Margot with a familiar file, the one Elias had kept locked in his safe for months. I caught a glimpse of the top page, a decades-old photo of a hospital nursery, a nervous-looking nurse, and a wire transfer receipt with Margot's maiden name. "Margot Blackwood," the agent announced, "you're under arrest for child trafficking, fraud, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping." Lila shrieked as they slapped cuffs on her mother. Daniel tried to bolt, but his injured leg gave out, sending him sprawling at my feet. I leaned down, close enough to smell his fear. "You should have left me in the storm," I whispered. "At least then you'd have gotten a quick death." Elias handed me a sleek tablet. On screen, a live feed showed Blackwood Industries' stock price plummeting in real time as our pre-programmed trades liquidated their assets. The ticker at the bottom read, "Blackwell Group completes hostile takeover." "Your company," I told Daniel, "now belongs to the daughter you threw away." The cameras caught every glorious second. Margot's perfect hair whipping wild as agents shoved her into a helicopter, Lila's mascara bleeding black down her face, Daniel's guttural sob as the realization hit. They'd lost everything. And I hadn't even broken a nail. The penthouse was silent except for the ticking of the antique grandfather clock Elias had salvaged from the original Blackwell estate. Moonlight sliced through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting silver stripes across the folder in my lap, the one containing every legal document that now made me the undisputed heir to 2 warring fortunes. On the television, muted footage played on loop. Margot's perp walk, Daniel's bankruptcy hearing, Lila's tearful interview where she claimed to be just another victim. The chyron below read, "Blackwood Empire crumbles, in bold scarlet letters. Elias placed a tumbler of whiskey beside me, the ice cubes clinking like a toast. "The rescue team's still on standby," he said. "Their plane's black box shows deliberate sabotage." I traced the rim of the glass. Of course it did. I'd paid their mechanic handsomely to ensure it would. Outside, the storm that had grounded all other aircraft was finally easing. The Blackwoods were still out there, huddled in some mountain rescue hut with nothing but their shame and the clothes on their backs. One word from me, and a helicopter would bring them to warm beds, hot meals, and a lifetime of answering for what they'd done. Or I could let nature finish what it started a year ago. The locket felt heavier than usual against my collarbone. I flipped open the hidden compartment, studying those engraved words. For my little swan. Not a plea for vengeance, a father's love note. I picked up the phone. "Send the chopper," I told security. Then, softer. "And alert the prosecutors, they'll have visitors by morning." Elias's approving nod warmed me more than the whiskey ever could. The rescue hut's coordinates blinked on the tablet screen like a heartbeat, steady, persistent, mocking. Through the satellite feed, I watched pixelated figures huddle around a failing fire. Daniel's silhouette slumped against the wall, his injured leg stretched out like a broken doll's. Margot paced, her designer coat now just another layer of debris. And Lila rocked back and forth, her arms wrapped around herself in a parody of comfort. Elias stood at my shoulder, his silence more eloquent than any speech. The helicopter's ignition key rested on the console between us, glinting under the penthouse lights. I reached for it, then stopped. The storm had stolen my voice once. Let it steal theirs now. Let them choke on the same helplessness they'd force-fed me for 18 years. My finger hovered over the kill switch on the satellite feed. One tap, and their last tether to civilization would vanish. No more cameras, no witnesses, just the mountain's indifferent embrace. Then, a flicker of movement on screen. Lila had found the hut's emergency radio. Her desperate fingers twisted the dial, static crackling like bones breaking. When her voice came through our speakers, it wasn't the polished society soprano I remembered. It was raw, human. "Please, someone!" The whiskey in my glass caught the light, throwing amber shards across my real father's ring on my right hand. The Blackwell crest gleamed, heavy with legacy. With mercy I'd never been shown. I brought the radio to my lips. "Frequency 121.5, I said softly, "for Mayday calls." Then I turned off the feed. Let them choose their own ending this time. The radio crackled to life in my palm, spitting out Lila's sobs in jagged bursts. The transmission was weak, the storm still chewing through signals, but her unravelling came through crystal clear. "You don't understand. We're the victims here. She set us up." A voice cut in, some harried rescue operator. "Mum, we have your coordinates. Hold tight." "No, you listen!" Lila's scream distorted into static. "That bitch has cameras everywhere. She's watching right now." I muted the feed, but not before catching Margot's hissed, "Shut up, you idiot!" and the wet slap of flesh on flesh. The satellite image showed Lila recoiling, one hand pressed to her cheek. Even in pixelated grayscale, I saw the moment her perfect princess persona shattered. She lunged at Margot, fingers hooked into claws. The feed cut out. Elias exhaled through his nose. "Took her long enough." I imagined it all too easily. Lila's manicured nails drawing blood down Margot's face. Daniel wheezing useless protests. Their precious family legacy reduced to a fistfight in a frozen shack. The social media alerts on my phone exploded with leaked audio clips. #Blackwood Brawl was trending in under a minute. The rescue team's status light blinked green. They hovered 5 miles out, waiting for my final command. I unmuted the radio just in time to hear Lila's whisper, "She won't save us." Not a plea, a confession. The storm howled its agreement. I tapped the console twice, the signal to proceed. Let the world see what happens when golden children tarnish. The penthouse terrace was quiet now, the storm having exhausted its fury. Dawn bled across the skyline, staining the mountains the same bruised purple as Lila's cheek in those final footage stills circulating online. Elias joined me at the railing, pressing a steaming mug of spiced chai into my hands, the same recipe his wife had loved. We watched in comfortable silence as the rescue chopper emerged from the valley, its searchlight cutting through the retreating darkness. No triumphant return, no redemption arc. Just 3 broken people being loaded onto stretchers, their designer clothes swapped for thermal blankets and handcuffs where appropriate. "You kept your hands clean," Elias observed. Not quite approval, not quite a question. I sipped the chai, letting the cardamom and ginger burn away the last traces of winter in my bones. Dirt washes off. Scars don't. The locket warmed between my collarbones as he studied me, really studied me, for the first time since that night in the cabin. What he saw must have satisfied him, because his calloused hand covered mine on the railing. Not a father's forgiveness, a partner's acknowledgement. Below us, the city blinked awake. Normal people with normal problems brewing coffee, kissing spouses goodbye, completely unaware that the Blackwell fortune now flowed through the veins of the girl they had left to die. The radio on the side table crackled one last time. A rescuer confirming the Blackwoods were sedated and secured. I reached over and turned it off with finality. Elias raised his mug. To new beginnings. I clinked mine against his. To better endings. Somewhere beyond the glass, the first true bird of morning took flight. The storm had tried to bury us both. But here's the thing about mountains. They make excellent foundations.